They base everything on how they feel, not their word.
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
I want you guys to think about something. This is what we talked about as a group, is just what's the karmic impact of being true to your word? What's the karmic impact on your life of being true to your word? Meaning that, what happens when you do own your word? What happens when you don't own your word? What kind of impact has that had on you and your results? And really, what type of impact has it had on your clients when you allow them to get out of that? Because what happens with you when you get under pressure? Right? And this is going to build up to what I'm teaching you guys on, is what happens when people get overwhelmed. This is what I'm leading to. Right? A lot of people get overwhelmed in real estate, they get overwhelmed in this business, and what they do is they'll tend to just create a story to justify letting themselves off the hook. And so I want to really talk about that along with integrity, because that's a secret. I can get up here and teach some really cool, strategic, that's really, operational, and kind of like you can use these word tracks, but none of this matters unless I live in a place of integrity. Right? When I mean that, I mean obsession. This is all the way down to, do I take the shopping cart back every single time when I'm at Walmart? Right? If I piss on the seat as a man, do I wipe that shit off? I've seen some guys in here piss on the floor and still walk away. Right? What's that say about here? Integrity in my obsession with everything. I'm just telling you, if you do that, it opens up a gate for massive success in every area, because you won't let yourself off the hook on the small things, or let yourself off the hook on the big things, if that makes sense, right? And so ask yourself a question today in that aspect: am I slippery with my commitments? It's important to think about that, because the whole thing it brings down is a list of karma. If I'm slippery in my commitments and I'm slippery in my ability to follow through with what I said I was going to do, what happens to my clients I'm dealing with?
Same thing.
It's going to be the same thing. I don't know how it works in the law, how it does, but I've noticed that in my career, the same exact thing happens to me. It also happens to people that I've watched and led and been around, and also coached with. The same people in business who always had constant problems with their clients, it was ironically the same problems they have with themselves. And so really today is just more deep, introspective, I guess you say, in regards to what am I operating in and how am I living up to my commitments, which I think makes a big difference, right? The whole thing I want you to take is my commitment has to matter. Now, it's really easy in the beginning, right? But when things get tough, when things get busy, when I get bored with it, what happens when I fall through? Now, what's the best way that we have as a team to measure that?
Team accountability.
Okay, deeper.
KPIs.
Right here. What happened to 80% of the people on week 4? They fell off the planet. They wrote a commitment, made a bold commitment, wrote it down, typed it up, committed to it, signed up, got in front of the whole company here and told them they were going to smash this out the water, and then Tuesday comes around 4 weeks later and they didn't follow through the commitment. Why do you think that is?
They let themselves off the hook.
They created stories and justifications to let themselves off the hook. You know why? They base everything on how they feel, not their word. This is what I'm talking about when I come up here to integrity. And so most of you guys, when I start out this conversation, is like, yeah, I'm in integrity, I live in integrity, I'm really good with my shit, right? I live great integrity. Until what happens? At the end of Tuesday, we ask about who did their 98 goals and where they're at. Everybody tends to get real quiet. And the reality is that's a true measure of your real integrity. Not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's just reality of what it is. And so what do I need to do? I got to make a decision of if I'm going to live in that integrity of doing so. Right? Or let myself off the hook. And we're all guilty of it, but if I can have myself have a discipline of being obsessed with it all the time, the chances are my results can be much higher. Why?
I mean, when you follow through on everything, that just compounds on itself.
You're always going to get your minimal acceptable standard. Period. And so the only way for me to help you level up your 90-day goals, which is your whole life, your relationships, your business, your physicality, your happiness, doesn't really get much more than that matters. Right? The only way you're going to level it up is to raise up your minimum standards of what your accountability is, really, and your obsession with what?
Yourself.
Integrity. My integrity to myself. And I think that's important to look at. Right? And so small justifications over time is what ends up costing us the most. Small justifications built up over time. And here's the thing, I've done this a million times. Notice this a lot since really being that 75 hard thing with the diet, not one cheat meal. The reality is, guess what? You justify here just a little bit. Justify here just a little bit. Justify here just a little bit. 90 days later, you gain weight instead of lost weight. And it's all what? It's not one big thing. It's small justifications that really inhibit integrity. But the same integrity that you do from an eating standpoint of what my diet is the same integrity that shows up when I make my phone calls in the back end. And so it's important for us to think about that in that aspect, because that's the whole part. Right? I want you guys to have this thing where you can have it all, but you can't do it all.
It's kind of about navigating the right choices on what to do and what not to do.
Yes. So in life, we can have it all in our 4 areas of life. Our body, our being, our balance, and business. Right? But I can't do it all, so what I got to do? Cut all the bullshit out and be very strategic about where I spend my energy and where I live up to my commitments and my integrity. And here's the problem with this, right? Everyone talks about being overwhelmed and being busy. Everyone, right? And that you feel super busy. But the reality is, most of the activities that you deal with, and most of us can probably agree with this, most of what you do, if you truly looked at it, is really bullshit. Right? I've caught myself in this, just looking at this too, right? Most of us, if I went with you and I followed you around with a camera for 24 hours, an entire day, and recorded it, you and I watched it together, what would it look like? A lot of bullshit, right? A lot of bullshit. But the problem is, we tell ourselves a story justifying how much we are, how much busy we are, and all this other stuff. And there's a few people that are pushing it hard. But in reality, there's so much reactionary stuff that we're allowing ourselves to get to for one reason, for justification. And so the one thing I want you guys to look at is ask myself this week, am I living in my integrity? And this is not something that's like sexy or fun or anything at all. But I want to teach that because no matter what I do, I can't push you in that regard. If I'm here, if I'm not here, I can't push you in that regard. But it doesn't matter if I'm here or not, because why? It has to do with my living in integrity. And so that's just something that's important to look at in that aspect of what we do, right? Here's what happens. Most people get overwhelmed. What do?
Shut down.
They shut down and stop doing the work. Every single time, right? And so when you get overwhelmed, overcommitted, right? Here's what you do. And this is something to write down. When I get overwhelmed and overcommitted, I start solving small problems. What most people do is you get overcommitted in your mind, right? And you feel busy, aka overwhelmed, and they stop doing the work every single time, right? And so when they do that, there's kind of this part here, and I can see this right here, is they stop doing the work here because overwhelmed. Now, guess what the other part is? You also let yourself off the hook from integrity. Because I have a story that I'm overwhelmed, and so I let myself off from integrity. I want to teach that today because that's the first point. All I hope for you guys today is that I can just see that. And say, look, when I'm overwhelmed right now, where do I not allow myself to get off integrity? I don't care how tired I am. And this is one cool thing about setting my heart. It doesn't matter how tired you are, dog dies, whatever happens, guess what you got to do? Work out twice a day, do the second workout, whatever it is. Why? Because I got to live in that place of integrity. And so the more I can get into this week, into next week, during the busiest time of our entire lives in real estate, we got to make sure we can live by that. The second thing I wrote down, when I get overwhelmed, I tend to first let myself off of integrity. I let myself off of accountability, and I stop doing the work. Every single time. I can see when people get that way, what do they think they do with me or anybody else here?
A lot of times I hide.
They hide. They pull away. They pull away. They pull away. Then the more I try to help them with accountability, the more triggered they get. Which should show, hey look, the reality is I got to be able to catch myself in a place to let myself off the hook of integrity. It's okay to be overwhelmed, and I'm going to teach you about that in a second of how we're overcoming that, but I wanted to just shine the mirror first. Right? In some places, a kick in the nuts for the guys, a better way to say it is like, look, this is important because you're letting yourself off the hook too many times. And it can be a comparison of who's doing something great versus you where you're at right now. Well, I sold 2 last month, even though so-and-so sold 6. Or also when you were 15 under contract the first, 6 weeks or something? Right? Where am I letting myself off the hook of where I want to be because I'm justifying my place versus them? That's a key conversation I want you guys to have there in that aspect. And so what happens is, here's the thing. You have this aspect of overwhelm, overcommitment, whatever it is, and we have this obstacle. That's right here. Then we have you. That's right here in this aspect. Obstacle. You. In this aspect, right? What's the problem here? You are too small. The obstacle's too big for you. In what regard?
You as you are now,
You as you are now, which is also another word for what?
your current state.
Starts with a C. Nope. What else? How much can I handle?
Capacity.
Capacity, right? So whenever you get overwhelmed, this has happened every single time. Beginning, you come in, you get a few deals, what happens? You freak out, holy I got 3, 4 pending, I'm losing my mind, this is terrible, and then what happens?
Steve's close.
You get through it, the deal's closed. Unfortunately, you didn't listen to me or anybody else, so you didn't make your phone call, so now you gotta start back over at 0. Then you get 3 or 4 more deals coming up, and guess what? It's not near as hard as it was before because what happened? You expand your capacity. You have to become bigger than the obstacle. And in some case, that means I gotta go back and look at what? My integrity. Where am I letting myself off the hook? Because what happens is you get next to this obstacle, and what do most people do here when they start pushing against this obstacle? They contract. Because it's uncomfortable. And that's something that's important to look at as well. Right? Most people here, they start focusing on small shit right here. This is when you clean the kitchen instead of having a tough conversation with your wife or your spouse. Right? There's people who clean their desk or reorganize some shit rather than make phone calls. They'll get a haircut, you know, in the middle of the workday versus following up on whatever it is. Right? I see it all the time. And so what happens, they're pushing against this wall here instead of doing what? Facing the obstacle, owning the integrity, and pushing through it. And it really just starts today of asking myself a question, where am I focusing on the small shit when I really need to focus on the big? The true question you need to ask right here, who do I have to become? It reframes the opportunity to change what? Me. Right? To change me on the inside, to change me, not scenario. Because I know if someone else can do it, someone else can get through it, someone else can put 16 under contract in the first 6 weeks or 18, whatever it is. The reality is, why can't I do that? Well, the reason is I'm smaller than the obstacle. And it's important for me to do that in that aspect. And so here's the thing. It all comes down to, am I willing to push through this? Am I able to stand in the fire of this? I wrote a quote down from some stuff I was studying here. I'll get to that later, but it's important to look at. If you have low stress, you have low performance. If you have low stress, you have low performance. Bottom line. Most people tend to seek a world of comfort instead of seeking a world of production, a world of progress. And so most people run for that instead of, hey, look, I can increase my capacity to a point where it used to stress me out doesn't stress me out anymore, or I can run from the stress. That's the difference. Right? As a business person here, like I said, expenses, some months huge, some months low. Right? There's months this company's lost a month before. Right? From a capacity standpoint, when I first started, that shit would kill me, literally probably. Literally probably would have killed me. Right? But over time, what happens? You adjust in your systems. Now, like I say, our expenses a month, sometimes a lot more than that, depending on what the month is. In reality, the machine runs pretty well because you have the capacity to feel and understand and focus what? Not on the small stuff, but the big stuff that moves the needle. That's the key to success there, right? The big stuff that moves the needle in that aspect. And so, it all comes down to the integrity. And ask myself here, who do I have to become? So this week or next week, whatever it is, when you get overwhelmed, and when you get into a place where you feel busy, you got all this going on, and problems going on, or whatever it is, what do I need to do? What's the secret here?
Ask that question.
Ask the question, who do I need to become right now? I stand in the fire and make sure I do not let myself off the hook of integrity.